it was a terrible business. It was a fucking disaster of a business. I didn't love business as a kid. I just wanted to make money, therefore business interested me. I wasn't flying on private jets. My parents weren't dripping in richer meals and the kind of life of today. There was never going to be, let's say, this is a family legacy for you to take over, but obviously opportunity was provided for me. My dad and I are very different operators as far as business is concerned. I mean, very different interests, very different attitudes to risk. But I guess at its core, an entrepreneur's an entrepreneur, isn't it?
Hi Matt, welcome to Parenting Without the Manual.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Come all the way from Bali to join us.
Just for this, to be honest.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a few things. Where you started, because obviously what we do here is we talk to entrepreneurial parents and we look at what shaped you, your childhood beliefs of what drove you to get your success, and how you pay that forward into modern day parenting. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
So I mean, look, and I as much as I don't look that old, I was a child of the 80s, and growing up as a wannabe entrepreneur in the 80s is very, very different to what it is in terms of the opportunities to grow up as an entrepreneur or wannabe entrepreneur in today's world. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur from being a kid. I think it's funny, there's probably two sides, because I was always described as entrepreneurial, but I think it just means resourceful. I mean, it wasn't so much that I was trying to make money. I was probably just trying to find ways to get people to say yes to the things that they were saying no to. But I was very money hungry back then. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that I wanted to do business to make money. I just wanted to make money. But in the late 80s, early 90s, we lived in an era where, whether or not it was true, the perception was very much that the only way to make money was to own your own business.
Yeah.
My old man owned his own business. He was a successful entrepreneur.
So you come from money then, do you?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can't claim to have come from poverty and have a rags to riches tale. I came from a good background. My parents came from poverty, but my dad built a successful business. He was first generation money maker, and I wanted for nothing as a kid, but I also didn't have everything I wanted, if that makes sense.
I want to ask you though, because one of the things I'm concerned about now, and I think is like how entitled our kids can be. So how did your parents manage bringing you up and keeping that, still keeping you hungry, if that makes sense?
I mean, there was always a deal to be done for something, and just to be clear, and everyone has their own perception or their own view on what rich is and how much money is, and by anyone's standards, my background was well-to-do. My dad owned his own business. Back in the 90s, he'd have been a multi-six-figure earner, which is probably like being a seven-figure earner today. Mm-hmm. We had a nice house, we had a holiday home in Spain, we went on lots of holidays. I wasn't flying on private jets. My parents weren't dripping in richer meals and the kind of life of today. So that was the kind of level we were at. So whilst, let's say, money was around, I was never, let's say, in a position to be able to be some spoilt kid where, it's like we live in Dubai. I mean, the bullshit we hear over here when, the parents almost encourage this spoiltness, where it's like, oh, my kids only eat caviar. I'm sorry, you and your kids are a fucking dick now, aren't you? And I think the behaviour of the kid is completely led by the behaviour of the parents. So I was never really able to be in that position because that quantity of money wasn't splashing around. Mm-hmm. But that said, my parents would, particularly my mother, would try and motivate me. When I say motivate me with money, look, I wanted money, they wanted something. We did an exchange of value. Now, whether that was as simple as tidying your bedroom for £5 or getting A stars in your GCSEs for £1,000, whatever it may be, they would always incentivize me. Yes, things were given to, let's say, things were available to me. Yeah. But
they taught you to earn it, though. They put this little barrier that you have to do something to earn it. Yes. They're not going to just give it to you.
And again, to some people, they say, well, you came from a cushy life. Well, yeah, because obviously I lived in a nice house and stuff, but what are my parents going to do? They're not going to make me live in the shed when they live in a nice house. But for example, when I wanted a nice watch, I was a 14, 15-year-old kid, I wanted a tag. Tag it was back then.
I remember I wanted that when I was about that age as well. Yeah.
They wouldn't buy me it. Yeah. I had to go to, I had to go and get a job for that.
Yeah.
So I guess very comfortable fundamentals and more were always provided, but the trimmings on top I had to work for.
But maybe also, do you think that you were inspired to be an entrepreneur because your dad was an entrepreneur?
I think
he set this sort of foundation of what's possible.
I think it's impossible to say it wasn't that in some way. I mean, like I said, I didn't love business as a kid. I just wanted to make money, therefore business interested me. But I guess I just naturally had to have become an entrepreneur by osmosis because, I was living with my dad in that environment. I mean, 30 plus years on, my dad and I are very different operators as far as business is concerned. Completely, I wouldn't say different beliefs, but very different attitudes, very different interests, very different attitudes to risk. But I guess at its core, an entrepreneur, isn't it? Whatever route you go down.
Did he ever think about leaving the business to you as he was, as you were getting older and he, bringing you into the business?
So the business he had, that was the one that he made all his money in, he sold when I was 17.
Right, gotcha.
So there was never an opportunity for that to happen for me. He then went on to invest in smaller businesses that he was trying to take passive stakes in, and my first business I worked in before I had my own business was one of his businesses.
Gotcha.
There was never going to be, let's say, this is a family legacy for you to take over, but obviously opportunity was provided for me because he had it. It was it was a terrible business. It was a fucking disaster of a business, but it was a great learning opportunity for me because I had all these different problems and things to work with, but it was never where I wanted to spend my life. I mean, would it have been where I wanted to spend my life if it was a much, much more successful business? I don't know. It's impossible to say. But I was 18 to 21 years old at this point. I was selling uniforms, career wear, polyester shirts, or polycotton trousers, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not really a sexy, glamorous business. And I was 21, and I wanted to go and open bars and clubs because that sounded a lot more sexy and a lot more fun.
And it's interesting that I'm listening to you talk, because I think back in those days, and I recall that as well, from what I remember, there was a lot more of that business where it wasn't sexy, it wasn't enjoyable, it just was business. Whereas I think today we're in a different world where people are making fortunes doing something that is sexy and enjoyable and living their passions. I think.
Well, I mean, but there's just massive differences to the world today. And I was just thinking about this a little bit before I was coming here today, just because I didn't know what kind of stuff we'd be talking about, but I always think about business and my past as we go on. I'm 45. I've been properly in business since I was 18. I've been selling in markets and being entrepreneurial, etc., since I was probably 13 or 14. So let's say I've been in business in some way, shape or form for about 30 years. And the way I kind of look at it is I would almost say there's been a generational change in business in once every 10 years in the life I've lived in. And the opportunities available to people. So if I try and put that into some kind of, let's say, real life context. So let's say decade number one, from being 15 to 25 for me. That was pre anything. I mean literally pre anything. No social media. I was just starting to use email. So because ultimately success in business, really comes from distribution. If you've got distribution, obviously you've got to have a good product, but you can have a shit product and great distribution, and you can make money. So, and I think ultimately as time's gone on, the ability to distribute, the ability to hit a larger market has become bigger or bigger, quicker and easier. So, if you look at that for my first 10 years of business, then let's look at my next 10 years. And I was relatively successful from 24 to 28. I was relatively successful. So, we knew each other a bit back in the day. I had multiple clubs, different businesses. But I did that before, let's say, two or three things. Before social media, before real use of the internet. Yes, the internet was there, but before real use of the internet, certainly before social media, before crowdfunding, before the concept of alternative lending as we have it today existed. I always look back and, I say, if I had those businesses I had, but I could inject those 4 ingredients, I would have been a billionaire back then. No, I mean, this is not bullshit internet talk. I'm a billionaire. I mean, no question about it. I was 27, 28 years old, and I made, I'm picking a number, let's say I was probably worth about 10 million quid at my peak before everything went. But that was 10 million quid 20 years ago. With none of the tools that allow mass distribution. Even if I wasn't being a billionaire, I guarantee I'd have been making 100 million plus by being able to have those things. I mean, you imagine like nightclub, strip clubs, those kind of things, but pumped up with social media. Actually, I was always quite good at raising capital in a world that didn't exist, but I could raise 10x that, 20x now. I had 11 clubs at my peak. That could have been 111 clubs.
You could open franchise, done all sorts of different things. The opportunities.
And so that was, let's say, decade 2. If you look at decade three, I mean now, and never mind decade 3. Look at the last year of the last decade. What AI is doing to us. Never mind the distribution. 5 years ago, we had the ability to distribute at scale, but we still needed people and infrastructure and everything else. Now, we don't need people. The infrastructure is there and given for us. It really is possible to not only distribute at mass scale, but to create at mass scale with minimal input.
So I was thinking about some stuff I want to ask you, right? Because you've just gone through some really good stuff. And this is like when I talk to parents, I'm talking to entrepreneurial parents and talking about conscious parenting, right? Now, obviously, you're going through the part of the entrepreneur that you are, but I've never contextualized. I've had similar but different journey. Like I've gone through different stages, different businesses of those different decades of my life. And I'm not contextualized like you have, which is really interesting for me. But you've got 3 kids, all different, very different age groups. So,
I might have a third one by the time.
Two and one on the way.
That's what we're talking for.
So, again, different age groups, different eras. So I want to come back to that. But even before then, you've explained a lot about your journey. Where did school play a part in that? And then what are the lessons you learned that have developed you?
So, wildly different answers for both me and my eldest and my youngest. So I was a school kid of the 80s and 90s. And that was in an era when the perception and probably the reality was that if you didn't go to school, if you didn't go to further education, you were a failure. You weren't getting, and it was kind of reality as well, because if you didn't have higher education, you weren't getting a good job. You were, okay, we can say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, but again, wanting to be an entrepreneur in the 90s was not as, let's say, popular, smiled upon, and as easy as it is in today's world. So the reality was most people, the ones who were going to be entrepreneurs were the real exceptions. So if you wanted a corporate job or wanted a good job, you had to go to school. If you wanted a profession like a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer or whatever, of course you had to go to school. If you went to private education and then didn't follow that up, I mean, that was like the ultimate sin that, your parents have spent all this money putting you through private education and you're going to fail them by not continuing that. It's like, what did we bother paying for your education for if you're not going to go and see it on? So I came from that era. But I also rebelled against it because I was desperate to leave school, not because of, let's say, the modern day attitude of, oh, school's shit and it doesn't do anything for you and, I just want to be out making money, or rather, I don't need school to make money. My attitude was just simply, I know I want to be an entrepreneur. I am gagging to make money. So every extra year I spend at school or higher education is going to be another year that's slowing down my ability to compound as an entrepreneur. So that's why I wanted out of it. My mum, she was from a background where she had nothing. She loved education for herself. She lost the opportunity to be educated properly because she had pneumonia or something. So she almost wanted to be educated vicariously through me, and also wanted the best for me, which their belief was education. My dad sat somewhere between the two of us, but also did think I should be getting education. So that's what I'd lived through. But
before you go to your kids and stuff, what I want to ask you though is,
I quit. I did quit.
You did quit.
So I did school to 18. I was going to take a gap year because I thought I'll try and make some money in the gap year. Then I thought, well, I can't really rush it in a year. So I went to university, convinced my mum to let me kind of work whilst being at university. After 6 weeks of being at uni, there was no way I could concentrate on the two things. So I said to my mum, you've got to let me leave. I want to go to work. And if everything fails during this next year, well, then I'll go back to uni then. And it's just like I've had a gap year like the rest of my friends. So no biggie. And she said, okay, you can go. And if you're not successful by the end of the year, then you've got to go back to uni. And I always say, here I am, 25 years later, praying that I don't have to join as a mature student in September.
A few close calls.
There has been a few close calls.
But again, this grit, resilience, all the ups, all the downs, the you being willing to shift your perspective and everything. Has things in school helped you out? Was it experience in school with people? Is there incidences, or is it something you've learned somewhere else? And like what do you think are the key ingredients before we go into like where your kids are at now?
I mean, I think ultimately you're a product of everything, aren't you?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, obviously when I was younger, starting my businesses at 18, 19, 20, whatever, my father was very wealthy back then. I mean, he'd been okay till he sold the business, and when he sold the business, he got good money. So whilst I very much wanted to go and make my own money, and he certainly didn't write me checks to set my businesses up or anything like that, I think I'd be lying if I didn't probably internally have some kind of safety net that it's like, oh, my dad's got a few quid, so I'm never going to be homeless. I mean, I never thought like that actively, but consciously, but subconsciously, it must have been inside me. But then my dad got on to basically a systematic set of failures, and by the time I was about 22, he was almost bankrupt.
Oh wow!
Which, you know, whilst it's another story in itself, it's something he's never really, recovered from. He's not bankrupt, but he's 95% down on where he was 20 years ago, and he's lost the motivation to go again. So by the time I was really starting to need money and want to take risks and stuff, I didn't have that safety net anymore. And then when I had my first massive failure and went bankrupt when I was 27, 28, I guess all I had going for me was the fact that I wasn't prepared to stay down. I'm not necessarily even saying I had the skills, or I knew I had the skills to get back up again, but so I'm 27, I've got a wife, I've got a 1-year-old kid. I was never born to be poor. So I had no choice but to find ways. And whenever people talk to me about the bankruptcy and they say, well, how did you pick yourself up at such a hard time? I was like, I haven't got a great story for you. My answer was simply, I didn't see I had a choice. I've got a mortgage that needs paying, a kid that needs looking after, so I've got to go and do whatever it takes to get it done. But then as time's gone on, obviously every day I learn more skills. Every time I have a problem, I find a solution. So at 45 years old now, I have an attitude to risk which is considerably more than most. But I would say that's because I know I've got the skills to pick back up again. If not, because ultimately when it comes to building a business, it comes to an idea, an offer, an ability to market, an ability to deliver these, or a network to be able to raise some capital from whatever it may be. And I've got all of those things anyway. Mm-hmm. Yes, it would be easier with a few million quid in the bank, but I can also do it without any of that as well. So that's what gives me my confidence, in the same way that I don't know if I was if I was Elton John and I lost everything tomorrow. Well, I could go on stage that night, tinker around on the piano, and someone's going to pay me a 250 grand check. So I guess it gives you a level of confidence and risk tolerance.
So knowing all of that, and I think that whether you see it as from the inside, but I definitely see it from the outside, that your dad he might have given you a bit of a safety net, like you say, subconsciously, but it hadn't flourished you with money, and you did have to go and earn it, and that was something you taught you. How do you now? And I know you've done stuff in business with your eldest. How do you set your kids up to win and to be prepared, and with everything that you've now got, because you're someone who's learned from experience a lot?
So my eldest, she's 19 now. I mean, probably at the time I had her, I probably anticipated she'd be my only child. I never imagined I'd come to Dubai, start chasing young girls, and forget that I didn't have the snip. But so she was, what it is, my pride and joy. But I thought that. I wasn't with a mom, but I always had a good relationship with a mom. But her mom and I are very different.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to push entrepreneurialism and business, etc. on her. Her mum never wanted to, because her mum was, it's not so much that her mum's the educator. She's not in that respect, but her mum is, her mum worries what other people think.
Gotcha.
So many decisions that were made.
She wants to sort of conform to society and
or the other mums. Now, to be clear,
you're complete opposites, aren't you?
well, and I don't say any of this, let's say, as a disrespect on her. She was was and is an amazing mom, and I've got so much time for her. But we would pull in different directions because, for example, I'd be saying, we talk about, I used to get money for doing things. So I'd say to my 12-year-old, all right, read this business book, and I'll give you 50 quid or whatever it may be. And she'd got no interest in reading it. And then I'll be saying to her mum, she read these books, and the answer would end up being, well, she doesn't like them. Of course she doesn't like them, because she's 12. Where are we going to go with here? Or I'd be saying, right, when she turned 18, and I got her a company set up in her name. I wanted to try and help her buy a property and do various things. Her mum went apoplectic with me, absolutely apoplectic, because she's saying, her friends are 18 and they haven't got companies and they're not directors. Just let her be a child. And I can try and get into the ins and outs of saying, hang on a minute, this is going to take 45 minutes a month of her time to have a property and to build some financial security, etc. But I'm banging my head against a brick wall because, again, in the nicest possible way to her mum doesn't have this knowledge, or her mum doesn't have these skills. Therefore, she doesn't understand what I'm trying to do to her. And I ended up, when I say gave up, I don't want to give it a bad way, but my daughter, she's on a massive education path. She's done phenomenal at school, pretty much A stars across the board at GCSEs, A's across the board at A levels. She's now doing aerospace engineering at Durham University. Okay. She's doing very, very well. She doesn't want business. She absolutely doesn't want business. So when you ask, what do I do with her and how do I spoil her or not spoil her or whatever now, I don't try and push any business on her because she's got no interest.
We're talking business, but what about like resilience and grit?
But what I do try and educate is financial literacy. Yes, because and that I do push hard on. Like when I used to push on business and I get the pushback to me, I gave up. But now I will always push very hard on financial literacy and investment in education, because I say to her, listen, I'm not trying to change the career path you're on. You want to be an engineer, happy days. But you don't want to be a skint engineer. And the things I'm trying to show you, the things I'm trying to tell you are going to take none of your time, by the way. And you're going to wake up at 40 years old just by boring simple things, by putting this 250 quid a month away that becomes 500 quid a month, that goes in a tracker fund, or that gets an 8% instead of a 6%. These very boring things that 99% of the world don't understand will mean that when you're 40 years old, for example, you might have a couple of million quid in your bank. For doing nothing, by the way, for doing literally nothing. And you can still be your engineer. But imagine being an engineer with a couple of million quid in the bank. So when you don't fancy being an engineer, you can take a year off, or when you want to invest in something or whatever it may be. So that side of things I do push hard on. My 3-year-old, she's 3, so we haven't got that far now, but her mom is very, well, it depends what kind of a mood she's in with me, but when she's not at war with me, her mom is very much of the attitude that I will defer to Matt's better judgment for education and finances. Okay. And I say we have always agreed that we'll homeschool her.
Right.
And not because I have some pathological hatred of the school system, but I just know that the things I want to take her on. And when you say what's your curriculum going to be, that's all right. Now I can't tell you exactly what the curriculum is going to be, but I know that the things that are important to me are multiple languages, financial literacy, things that might not even look like education. But if she had a brain, a nice network, spoke 3 languages and could play the piano, the violin and the guitar, I'd be much happier with that, by the way, than if she could recite geography backwards or something like that. So I want to kind of go down that route with her. And then when it comes to spoiling them, it's a fine line, because I want to do the best. I do want to do the best for them, and I'm sure I'll give them more. I'll give them what other people consider spoiling them. But actually, I think to me, spoiling isn't an amount of money. Spoiling is the attitude that somebody has, and you could give someone 100 quid, and they could be a total spoilt twat, or you could give someone 1 million quid, and they could be the most humble, respectful person in the world. And I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've done things like with my eldest, 19. If you look back, she had so much opportunity to be a spoilt brat. She'd have a 20 grand birthday party at 7 years old and those kind of things. But I kind of hit it with both angles, if you like. That I would never, I'd never tolerate rudeness or disrespect or misbehaviour. Even now, if with again the 3-year-old, if no matter how much I hate her mom or we're at war with her mom, I will never tolerate the disrespect from the baby to the mom and things. So I think ultimately, it's like when you say alcohol makes them a bad person. No, it doesn't. Alcohol just shows what a bad person they already are. And it's the same with money. You can write someone a blank check, but if they're a good person, they'll just be a good person with a blank check.
I think when you're saying that, you don't hold it against like the schooling system, or you don't have a hatred for the schooling system, but what you are highlighting is the skills that you want them to have that are important, whether it's playing the piano, whether it's speaking the languages, is not what's being necessarily taught at school. And what you're saying is, and especially financial literacy is obviously a big one. You haven't touched so much on emotional intelligence, which I think is also another big one. I think that when you even talk about how you are, and again, I'm seeing patterns in you, by the way, because you've gone through ups and downs. You've been able to regulate and recover. That's a big emotional strength that you've got. And so when you see things now, and I think as well as for all of us that are entrepreneurs that we've gone through, when you're willing to pick yourself up, you sort of battle harden, and you just become a lot calmer in every situation. Everything's like,
But it's hard, it's bad, because as parents, we don't want our kids to go through any hard times. We want them to have the best of everything. I mean, again, unless it's a social media person today that says, I'm going to make my kids eat shit because, but we don't really want that, right? But it's how do you strike that balance? I tell you, I mean, literally this afternoon, the baby's in Bali, and the nanny sent me a video, and she's playing there with her little best mate. They're both like literally just a few weeks younger than 3 years old. And my daughter has gone and put her best mate, the on and off best mate, she goes and pushes this other kid. And this other kid turns around and she's a lot bigger than her. She clocks her and she gets her, and she's sat in a headlock, and I can hear my daughter crying and screaming. And let's ignore the funniness of it. The one side of it is, if I was there, I'd want to be running in and interrupting and saying, get off, I'll come away. But then the other side of it is me saying, as soon as I get back to Bali, I'm going to show you how to throw a couple of punches. Because ultimately, as much as you don't want them to have the bad things, they can't improve. They can never improve. And listen, I can sit here now and say, I wouldn't have had my life any other way. The knowledge I've got now, the skills I've got now have come from the hard times. Would I really have had it another way? Well, I'm sure I probably would have rather had it another way.
But it is what shapes you. Like those bad things do shape you. Listen, I used to say and obviously I'm divorced as well, and I've gone through similar things. I don't know if I'm as much at war, but we've I couldn't homeschool. I would have wanted to, because like what you had with the mother of your first child. I wouldn't say we have different views. She's probably more, my ex-wife definitely looks at me as the business person, as the guiding star of educational decisions. But again, it's one thing saying it. If we're in different countries or whatever, or different places, she's got the one that's got to affect it essentially, right? And that's where the challenge comes. But I always just say, look, I kind of want my son to fall over. I don't want to eat shit, but I want him to fall over and be able to pick himself back up, because I'm not always going to be there to pick him up.
Yeah.
And he needs to develop that muscle. I can't go to the gym for him. Do you get what I mean?
It's finding the middle ground, isn't it? And I guess if we talk about it, let's say physical danger, this is something where my 3-year-old's mom and I do disagree on. I'm not paranoid, but I don't want her to get hurt. If she's a bit older now, so it's not an issue. But a year ago, if she's in this room and she's swinging on this table or climbing on something, or climbing on these chairs, I'm not running behind her sweating, but I'm always wanting to look, because I always want to know what goes on and be able to help her if something falls. When she's with her mum, she'll be walking along ceilings, and her mum will be in the room. I'm saying, "What are you doing?" And she needs to learn. When she falls, she'll learn not to do it again.
Yeah.
And the argument I'd always have,
she falls and dies.
No, exactly. That's the argument I'd always have with her. I'd say, listen, there's falling from a foot high onto a sponge floor.
Yeah.
There's falling from a meter high onto a concrete floor.
Yeah.
These are two materially different things. And I guess it's that, how do you let them fall? How do you let them get cut but not an artery bleeding? How do you let them get a slap but not a punch?
I don't know what you went through as a kid, but for me, I used to climb trees, and I fell from height and fractured my skull, and could have died a number of different times, and I'm still here today. I mean, who knows? but then, and the flip side is, sometimes kids fall and do die. It's like,
and sometimes you can drown in a centimetre of water, and you can flourish in a mile of sea. I mean, but I also don't think you can use you can't use freak examples, to combat common sense. But no, look, there's no good answer or right answer, and it's a balance. It's a tightrope, isn't it? Everything is a matter of choices.
You've got 2 girls. Is it the third one? Do you know is a girl?
It's a girl. Also, yeah.
Punished. I wonder how you'd be with a boy if you had a boy instead of a girl. Do you think you're different as a father now, like with daughters, versus how you'd be if you had a son?
I mean, look, it's very hard for me to say because I'm not there. I mean, it's funny. Before I'd had any kids, I always wanted a son and a daughter. I wanted the son first and the daughter second. To the point that when my daughter was born, we didn't know the sex of my daughter until she was born. So I convinced myself the only clothes I'd bought were male clothes. I utterly convinced myself. When she came, I was so convinced that when she came out and I saw the umbilical cord, I thought it was a penis.
Yeah.
She was a boy.
Yeah. Well hung.
And then when they cut it, I'm like, no, what are you doing? We're not Jewish. But literally, I always say to my daughter, I couldn't even talk to you for the first 2 days. You let me down so much by being a girl.
Oh my God, you don't.
But then
you didn't say that to her.
I do really, but then when I've gotten used to being a girl, now I can't imagine having a boy. People are saying to me, "Oh my God, your 3rd kid's a girl. Do you not want a boy? You're going to try for a 4th?" I'm saying, no, I'm really happy with the girls. Maybe that's I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm trying to make sure that because I've been a bad guy with girls for all my life, that they don't have to fall foul of the stuff I'm up to. I don't know what it is, but I'm much more into a cuddle with the girl than a rough and tumble with the boy.
Right, gotcha. I don't know. I wanted a boy. I don't know if I could imagine myself having a daughter. I think he's going to I'm saying that he's going to be my only child. I'm older than you anyway. I'm 48 this year. I don't see myself having another child. I don't think. You never know what could happen, right? But
that's what I said 50 years ago.
You got me thinking, right? But I was a rascal when I was a kid, and I just connect more that I want to teach him how to fight and do stuff and all of those things that we talk about. Look after him. I find it a lot easier. I find myself I think I would go mad if I had a daughter just being very protective. That's what I visit. Again, I suppose you adapt to the situation, as you grow up through the years and stuff.
I mean, like I say as well, I've been very lucky with my eldest, and I've got to give her mum the bulk of the credit for this, because she lived with her for more during those older years. I mean, when you see the young kids of today, these 14-year-olds that look and behave like 25-year-olds, with the makeup and the boys and the say
overall energy,
and I'll say inappropriate conversation. I mean, it's funny because what's good for me on one hand is not good for someone else on another. But I'd be utterly mortified if that was my child. Now, and again, it's ultimately comes, I guess, down to the parents and what the parents allow them to see and behave, and what they don't punish them for. And I'm very lucky in the fact that my eldest daughter's mum was not a promiscuous person, or was not someone who wore mini skirts and makeup and all that kind of thing. So I've not had to suffer a teenage daughter that I'm tearing my hair out with, bringing home boys and doing all this kind of stuff. I know I'm going to have my work cut out with the second one. But all I can do is make sure I'm as present as possible.
Yeah, good stuff. So, interestingly, right, you were talking about when you set your eldest one up in business. This situation in the UAE has got me reflecting, and I'm probably going to more than likely pull my son out of school by September. He's 9 years old, and my thinking is, what this has done for me, I kind of wanted to homeschool previously. I got caught into the trap of culture and like society, just put them in the best school that you can and all of this kind of stuff and tick those boxes and socializing and stuff. But paying all the money that we pay and then having such a poor service that we've had with this remote schooling, I mean, that you've probably not really experienced it.
I haven't personally experienced it, but I've got friends who are doing it, and it's not easy for anyone, is it? I mean, it's probably no easier for the teachers having to deliver
exactly.
it.
I feel for the schools because they weren't set up for this, but I do feel that for the amount of money that we pay, they should pivot and adapt faster. Yeah. And it's not really rocket science to go back home and then put the thing on. What's actually happened is all the parents flew back to the UK, and it's not really been organised. They just it's been a bit of a shambles, disappointing. But what I started questioning is if I took that money that I'm paying on schooling, which there's a value to it, but I don't think there's enough of a return on capital, right?
Yeah.
If I just really, what I want my kid to learn is health, is having a good mindset, being healthy, being able to socialize, building his network, doing stuff. Also, being willing to take risks and fail. I'd rather set him up, and we're talking about, like you say, this third decade of now AI. Like, I think they're still learning stuff that's so antiquated that
like
what they learn that's antiquated, like you say, like geography, history, like it's not really changed since you and I were at school. How much, okay, perfect example. If you said to me today, what are the best career choices? So you spoke about, I think, lawyers and doctors and stuff like that. So growing up, I wanted to make money. My dad told me be an accountant, lawyer, or a doctor. And so that meant studying, and actually my whole path was go to university, then qualify as a lawyer. I ended up falling out, going into nightclubs. I graduated university, and instead of doing that 3 years of law or accounting, I went into nightclubs and I became an entrepreneur. And actually, I made a lot more money doing a lot less work and actually having a lot more fun. Right? But I think today, if you said to me, what's the best career that I think a child could have? I think one of them would definitely have to be being a YouTuber. I think another one would definitely, even whatever business, if you want to be a flipping tire changer or mechanic, you have to become a marketer. Mm-hmm. Right, or you want to be a dentist, but you have to be a dentist that knows how to do social media. So those two key skills I think should be like massively taught skills right now. And the third one being AI. They're teaching coding now. Coding is already redundant. Do you again? And they're not even teaching coding in a curriculum. They're teaching it as an external course that you pay for. So on top of the big expenses, right? So these are things now. I think we're in an attention economy. I think kids today at my son's age, 9, 10 years old, should be studying how to control attention, like how to get attention. Like for whatever you're going to do. I think it should be studying how to build networks. I think networking should be a thing. I had a guy on my podcast recently who was saying, actually, everything they teach you in school, because I had to unlearn myself. Because today we pay mentors so we can learn the fastest way. Well, if you were at school and you're going to learn from the kids doing better, that's considered copying, or you're sort of reprimanded for that.
I think there's balance is the wrong word, but
common ground or like a compromise.
I think what it is, because listen, on the one hand, I'm absolutely for all these things, but I also think you can only be good at being fast on something when you've got, let's say, underlying skill sets. Now, let's say you use code. Maybe coding's not the right example because I mean there's a lot to learn there, and you can vibe code very well without it. But let's just say, for example, you can write a book on ChatGPT. But I'm thinking about this because it's something I'm doing. In the last week or so, I've just written 2 books.
Or ChatGPT's written 2 books.
But this is where I would do, because I know the what's the word, the content, if you want to say, because I know the content of these 2 books, particularly one of them better than I would argue 99% of the world do. I've used ChatGPT to speed me along.
Yes.
I've used ChatGPT to help me write structure, to help me find gaps.
Yes.
It's ChatGPT's also told me a lot of stuff that I'm saying, that's absolute rubbish.
Yes.
You need to remove that. You need to remove that. How can we do it better? Now, so I've done a year's work, let's say, in a weekend, but but the finished product is only as good as it is
because of what you know,
because of the knowledge that I've got.
I get that,
and that's that. And when we talk about geography and history and things, do I think we should learn it? Look, I think we also have to consider that everybody is different people in the world, and you know, some if you love geography, okay, maybe it's going to be useless for you, but if you're happy to earn 50 grand a year and do geography or be an explorer or read a map, then that's entirely up to you. Do I think someone should have 15-20% of their school life spent on geography? No, I don't. Do I think it's important to know where the various things in the world are?
I'll tell you something else as well. So here's another thing, right? And you say it all the time as well, and this is you, right? You run your own podcast, you're a networker, your network is your net worth, all this kind of stuff, right? These kids are taught nearly I wouldn't say don't socialize, it's wrong, but like, you know, sit down, be quiet, don't move, don't leave your seat. That whole, you've got to understand at this age, that's shaping what they believe is right and wrong. Just the thing of everything they're doing, if they're playing and they've got this natural, I agree, not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur, right? Let's agree, there's going to be a percentage that are just going to get a safe job and go down that route. But they're talking to this person, no. What they're hearing as a kid is like these blockades of, okay, that's wrong, like this, and that's not going to serve them in a modern world.
I think if we use the word, if we consider the word entrepreneur and almost like take the business side of entrepreneur out and just say you're an entrepreneur or something, is a thinker, a problem solver, an achiever of this. I think everyone can be entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Should everyone be a business owner? And because I think that is something that we do because we love business. We say you've got to have your own business. You've got to have your own business. No, 90% of people shouldn't have their own business because it'd be terrible. However, the kind of skills and things you've been talking about, they're applicable to anything. So when we talk about marketing, it's good to be a great marketer.
Yeah.
If you're going to own your own business, you absolutely should. If you're going to be the geography teacher, you should still be able to know how to market because you could communicate with the kids better.
100%.
So, you know, socializing, health, fitness. I think there's so many skills that I'm totally with you on the fact that there's so many skills that we don't learn that we should learn. I'm probably just not there when people go, you know, you've got to have a business. You've got to have a business. Yeah. No, you've got to have what you want to have and make as much money as you can make whilst retaining the happiness that you want to have. Because again, the thing I'll always talk about now is that, you know, what does success like? And I think that the word success is far too attached to finance.
Oh, well, I'd agree with that.
And I'll say for me, success is happiness.
I agree.
If you are living a happy life, you're successful. Yeah. And I think if you've achieved what you set out to achieve, that is success. And the example I always give is if you're a young girl and you say, my absolute dream in life is to be the world's best wife and the world's best mum. And you see that girl when she's 40 years old and she's got 3 kids who are lovely kids who have gone well through school, and she's been a housewife for 20 years, giving her husband everything she needs so that he can give her and the family everything they need. And she's flat broke and the husband ain't got much money.
Yeah.
Are they successful? I'd say she's a rip-roaring success because she's done everything she set out to do.
Yeah.
In the same way that if someone set out to be a billionaire and he makes 10 million, I'd say he's probably pretty unsuccessful, to be honest, because he's not achieved what he want to achieve. And then if someone says, I want to go and make 100 million and they go and make 110, are they successful? Well, they're successful by the metrics of what they set out to do. But if they've got a failed marriage, kids who hate them, the fat and all the other shit that goes with it, well, listen, I wouldn't take that for all the money in the world.
You know, I did a lot with Tony Robbins, and he talks about happiness is if life conditions is equal to or greater than blueprint.
Yeah, as in like, outcome is in excess of expectation.
What you expect, yeah, exactly. Yeah, your model of the world. And if your life conditions don't equal your blueprint, i.e., your blueprint is what you think the world should be, what then you're not a success, right? But coming back to what I was doing, like with my son, I think, look, he's opted to be, I think, an entrepreneur at this point. I mean, I'm happy for him to be. He can do whatever he wants to be. But when I look at a YouTuber, I don't consider necessarily a YouTuber entrepreneur, by the way. I see a YouTuber taking a passion or an idea where they're actually living a fun life and just being able to monetize it. And that's, I think today that would be a great career for the average 18-year-old to 25-year-old. With AI now, God knows where it's going to be in 10 years' time and what the right path is going to be then. My point is, we need to be thinking that, I think, in schooling and in educating our kids, whatever it is, what does the world look like in 10 years and how are we preparing for them, helping them prepare for it today? For them. Yeah. But and I just figured that with all the money that I'm spending on private school, if I put that into his businesses, and he like what you said about your daughter at the beginning, and he failed, which I'd be more than happy for him to do. That's the learning, that's the development. And I think when you and I discuss, okay, we are entrepreneurial, but we look at who we are today, and are probably both very proud of ourselves to be when we look at the man in the mirror, right? It's those experiences and the overcoming and the successes and the failure and all of that we've gone through that we can go, I'm really proud about that. And I think I think he's opting for that anyway. I'm definitely not pushing it on him. I think he's seen daddy do it, and that's where he sort of, like, again, he was at the launch yesterday and he was incredibly proud and wanted to get on the mic and wanted to be around and see it. And we came back last night and he was like, Daddy, can I have an Elysian Minds bag? Because we gave all his goodie bags away. And I haven't given him one because he's got everything, right? But he just wanted to have the bag, it gave him a new level of pride and everything for it, Right, my team, we're coming towards the end, so my team have prepared some questions that, I don't know how much dirt they've dug up, right? But okay, so look, you haven't touched on it majorly today, but I know you've had a number of big successes and you've gone through bankruptcy and then come back up and come. So is bankruptcy actually the best business school in the world? Or is that just something people say to make themselves feel better? Take your time.
Is it the best? Listen, the things. It's like what we were saying earlier when we say about learning from the scars. I mean, there isn't much of a biggest. I mean, I guess bankruptcy is akin to death in a way, and what you learn about yourself when you're looking down that alleged tunnel of light is probably more than you can learn at any other time. Do you really want to go there? Like, listen, today I am a product of what I've had for the last 25 years, which has been all the downs as well as all the ups. So I can't change that. And, I guess I've benefited from those scars. Would I suggest that someone else goes through it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I guess obviously I now try and make a career out of helping people not make the same mistakes I've made by let's say imparting the knowledge that I've had. But the problem in so many situations is we don't like to listen to other people. There's a very small minority who listen to mentors, who can allow other people to make decisions for them in times of absolute crises. And the problem is, in these kind of bankruptcy situations, you don't know the answer because you've never been there before, and you'll probably never be there again. So do I think it's something people tell themselves to feel better? No, I think it is a phenomenal school, the school of bankruptcy. But is it a school that most people would rather avoid? I think it is, yeah.
And there's nearly most successful people have gone through bankruptcy and recovered and built again, So there's a lot there. Can you teach someone to be a great entrepreneur, or is it something you're born with?
I think you can teach them the skills of being a great entrepreneur. We touched on things, like marketing and communication and sales, and because these are skills that are applicable to many different areas of life, not just business. I think you can teach people the skills, but to really be an entrepreneur, I think you've got to have creativity, you've got to have appetite for risk, you've got to have a desire to change the world, or certainly to change your own little world. those things are probably a bit more what you're born with, or maybe maybe it's not what you're born with, they're a product of the circumstances that you've grown up in. But I don't really think you can go to school and get grit. I mean, yes, you can maybe teach people when you're teaching a kid how can you get grit and how can you do these things. But I think like the real best entrepreneurs out there, it's probably something magic with them. In the same way, if we give it a sporting analogy, can whatever sport, football, can anyone be taught to play football? Yeah, anyone can be taught to play football. But the Beckhams and stuff of this world, they're just born with some magic that nobody else can have. We can all learn to kick a ball with our left leg and our right leg, and whatever it may be. But there's always going to be some people who are better than others, and there's always going to be some people who just don't need a school because there's just something magic inbuilt in them.
I think that I think some level of success sometimes is like in connection to risk you're willing to take. I think if you're willing to take a bigger risk, it doesn't always mean a bigger reward, but it definitely means you can go where people haven't been and you can do things, And I think that sometimes the hardest times you've faced help you. Like, I think my level of risk aversion now, I'm not risk averse at all. I could do anything, and I'm pretty sure you feel the same, right? I think that's because when you've been so low, when you rebuild back up, you just back yourself. You just it hasn't killed me, and if I die, and whatever's going to happen, right? But I think that going through that, sometimes when people are faced looking down that dark hole there, some people break and some people break through, basically. And I think that if you break through, you then back yourself every single time, pretty much, and it takes you to another level. Are we raising a generation of financially illiterate adults, and are the parents to blame or the system?
I mean, I don't think it's this generation. I think it's all generations. Because the things we were talking about earlier, the things that you want to correct, with your education platform, financial literacy has never been something that's taught. I mean, listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't subscribe to the things that we've purposefully not taught it because we want to have this this world of sheep and stuff. I mean, I just think we just don't teach it. And
why do you think they haven't taught it? Come on, it must.
Why do I think they haven't taught it?
While you're thinking about it, let me say this to you, right? For me, there's two failed systems out there massively failing, right? Education and the medical. Mm-hmm. And I know you've become a lot more health conscious, so you're now aware over the last sort of five odd years, I would say you've become 5 to 10 years, you've become a lot more health conscious. Yep. And I would say that both systems massively fail. We know that the medical industry is pushed by these drug companies that, they're not there to cure the problem. So actually, there is a lot of holistic health things that you now do and other people do that are great for you, right? And which no one's really taught us. But even the medical industry is more as advanced more than the educational system. It's not people don't know. It's not teachers don't understand.
So I guess the medical sector probably fails, I'd say, for two things, which would be one, misaligned incentives, and two, appetite for risk. And so obviously we know the misaligned incentives are that it's cheaper to give someone medicine for a problem than it is to cure. Sorry, not cheaper. It's more profitable for a drug company to give someone medicine for a problem than it is to cure that problem. And then I think there's probably a risk appetite or lack of risk appetite. That, I mean, you talk even simple things like, for example, I've been on testosterone replacement, for 4 years, 5 years.
That's what's got you in all the trouble.
Exactly. But if I go and talk about that to people in England, I mean, I'm telling you, 99% of doctors are anywhere between completely against it and don't understand it.
Yes.
And why? I think we're in a world where they get sued for everything. They don't want to take any kind of risk whatsoever. They only want to prescribe the things that they've been given or taught about. And again, we can say, well, they're prescribing something because they pay better for it. No, listen, I know plenty of doctors who are very genuine and honest people, etc. But they just stay in their lane. And I guess if we then take that to education, I think the world tends to stay in its lane. And you think, well, you know, why are we not building generations of entrepreneurs? Because people don't want to be entrepreneurs. You know, they want someone else to give them a salary at the end of the month. They don't understand the fact that it's more risky that someone else is giving you a salary than you've got the skill set. But, you know, but most people, they're just steady eddies in their lane, aren't they? You know?
So here's a question. Do you think that the most people want to be fit and healthy, or do you think that some people just want to be fat and lazy?
I think most people want to be everything, but most people don't want to do anything.
Work. Yeah.
You know, and I think everybody wants to be rich, but nobody wants to take the risks.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have a six pack, but nobody wants to stop eating shit.
Yeah.
And you know, you can apply that across the board, and I think it starts off as laziness, and then as life goes on longer, you sell yourself a story to convince yourself why you're happy that you're skint and why you're happy that you're fat. But I mean, ultimately, because there's nothing in life is complicated. You know, like businesses. Okay, certain businesses, you know, if you're doing tech or medical or whatever, you know, certain things are complicated in that respect. But the fundamentals of business, just like the fundamentals of fitness, just like the fundamentals of cooking or anything, I mean, none of this stuff is complicated. But it all takes effort that nobody wants to do.
Jim Rohn used to say it's simple, but it's not easy.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Have you heard the expression, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay. Are successful parents actually better at raising resilient children, or does money make it easier to get it wrong?
I guess that comes down to who is the person underneath the money. And again, you were talking earlier about, you know, alcohol doesn't change you, it amplifies you. And I believe that money, alcohol, drugs, all these things, they're not agents of change, they're agents of amplification. So I guess it depends, you know, what are the underlying parents like, you know, what's their attitudes, and again, you know, so I'm not, let's say, being sexist, but let's just take, for example, you got a successful, a rich guy. Let's use the word rich because, you know, we're saying successful isn't necessarily that, but we say a rich guy who gets in, let's say, a stereotypical relationship with a hot girl who doesn't, let's say, maybe do any work. She does whatever she does with the kids. She likes to spend the husband's money. Blah, blah. It just proliferates down, you know, by osmosis onto the next generation. I think until listen, the thing cuts the other way if it's a girl with a guy. So you know, I don't want to be getting your Instagram full of
manosphere,
full of spam comments of hatred. But what I mean is, unless somebody takes a step back and wants to make a change or wants to implement something, then you know then none of these things are going to change. Look, if I look at who I am today, listen, I've got so many things I can be better at and need to be better at, etc. But you know, I'm not the man I was 5 years ago. I'm certainly not the guy I was 25 years ago, because I have a never-ending appetite for learning and improvement.
Yeah.
Not for any reason than that's where I want to be myself. You know, I want to be better. You know, I want to be, whether it's, you know, better fitness or better looking or better read or better educated. You know, I always want to be better, and the vast majority of the world have no interest in it whatsoever. And you know, I always say that, you know, most people stop learning the day that they leave school or leave university. Some people stop learning before they even left school. Yeah. And I think, you know, so these successful parents, is it easier, is it harder, is it whatever, you know, ultimately I don't think it's about the money, it's about you know, who you are as a person. And I think, you know, you've got to have that ongoing desire to improve.
Yeah, I think, you know, you look at where we are today, and if you're raising your daughter here now, or daughters, or Bali, wherever you want, you're able to do that because of the success that you have. If you, I remember during COVID, we were living in a 7-bedroom house in Spain, and we were at our swimming pool, and we would walk by the beach and everything. And I was just thinking, God, imagine if we was like a single parent. There's a single mum, 3 or 4 kids in a tower block, and she's not allowed to leave. I mean, there are things that, like, having success does. help you do certain things. And
money gives you access.
Yeah.
But you've got, but then how do you use it? It's like, again, one of the things you were asking about earlier was like, like spoiling, for example. Money gives you the access to do whatever you want, but how are you going to use it?
Yeah. I think that, but like, I don't know how much you believe in like manifestation and things like that, but I think like when you see like around you what's possible, I think one thing good about living in Dubai, the standard is quite high. So there's nearly an expectation that this is going to be your life standard moving forward. I think that, our kids that grow up here are just going to look at this is like the baseline. I don't see them falling between. Whereas if they were growing up in another city, country, whatever, that might be different. It might not. I mean, if they, we're in Africa or Ethiopia or like, I don't know, Philippines, wherever, that might not be the perception. It might be, hey, what normal life is, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and work in this tribe or do this thing, and that's going to be the.
It's absolutely who are the people.
Like you said, osmosis is what you've been saying the whole time, is the thing that you've gone up and done. Just in closing, because we really should come into time, and I hope you might be a dad, might be saying, might be popping the champagne, right? Normally, I ask people on the podcast, and I ask you. You've got a wealth of experience, about to be your third time as a parent, and you've gone through divorce or breakups, not being with the parents, with the mother rather, and in business. If somebody was going into parenthood right now, maybe someone's in the midst of things. Obviously, you've raised a daughter to 19. So far as you've got some wisdom and experience, what would be one bit of advice that you would give to somebody just becoming a parent or going through divorce or going through breakups, whatever,
I think one of the biggest things I always say, particularly for new parents, I could give you many different advices all along the way, but particularly for new parents, is not to let it change you. It will obviously change you because you have a kid, but too many people overthink and over stress. When that kid comes along, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have a baby tomorrow, and my life's going to change. My life's going to be over. I'm not going to be able to do anything, and I think ultimately the kids are a reflection of the parents.
Yeah, and
I think you've got to live your life, integrate them into your life. Your life will naturally change because you're probably not going to be going to a nightclub, but whatever you're going to do it with the kids. Have as much time together, etc. as possible, and I guess you'd just be very conscious of the fact that by osmosis again, kids learn everything by osmosis, and I always look at other kids, and when you see twatty kids or annoying kids or whatever it may be, ultimately, when you look at them, that's what those parents are. And I've got a mate, someone I know back in England. He's got 3 kids. They're all these little kids are petrified, and the moaning, the whining there. But you look at the dad. He's a total pussy.
Yeah.
Worrying about this and worrying about the other, worrying about things. But to be very clear, he doesn't need to worry about any of these things. He's just a worrier.
Yeah.
And this is obviously passed on by osmosis. So I think it's probably 3 different avenues, 3 different tangents of conversation in there all. But obviously just be very conscious that kids learn probably not from what you say, but from what you do. What they see in the environment around them. But enjoy the experience. It will change you naturally. You don't need to let it change you by force. And it's the funnest thing that can happen.
I love it. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, and congratulations again.
Thanks a lot for having me.